Yes, that's right. Survivor Know It Sums are here with you today to discuss the Survivor Cambodia finale. And I'm sure you're wondering, hey, wait a sec, that's not Rob Sesternino talking as if he's on the Survivor Know It Alls. No, it's not. It's Jordan Parhar live with you after the Survivor Cambodia finale. And I'm joined by my good pal. She's another Survivor Know It Sum, and she's filling in for Josh Wigler tonight. It's the great Jessica Leese, ladies and gentlemen. Jessica, how are you doing this evening?
I'm pretty great, Jordan. We got a guy in a plaid shirt. We got a guy with glasses. It's just like Rob and Josh are here, really.
It really is, right? I mean, it's the exact same. It's great. I love it.
It's exactly the same. Now, we need to be really clear with you guys. The reason that you're not seeing Rob and Josh is because Rob and Josh are off doing something far more exciting. They are off at the actual Survivor finale, and we want to let them enjoy that. They're going to be recording something. It will be up tomorrow. So hang out with us for now. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a lot to talk about.
We have a lot to talk about, and yeah, Jessica's right. So that's Rob and Josh are having fun. They're at the finale. We're here to break it down live for you, so that way you guys have something to watch tonight after the finale, because there are tons of reactions. People want to know what's going on. We want to hear from you guys too about what you guys thought about the Survivor Cambodia finale. Second chance, Jeremy Collins wins unanimously. Quite a night. So definitely tweet us. We are live here on a Google Hangout. So if you want to send us your questions, please do so. Leave them in the comments below on the YouTube video, or you can tweet us using the hashtag RHAP. I'm at Jordan Parhar, and Jessica is at Haymaker Hattie. Okay, well, Jess, let's just hop right into this thing. We're gonna try and keep this thing not too long, because Survivor Know It Alls is gonna be posted tomorrow, so there's plenty of coverage that's coming out as well. There's also going to be a Survivor voicemail recap show tomorrow with Rob and Josh, so definitely leave your voicemails for the two of them and give them your feedback if you can't get into this tonight. So that you can leave them a message at 323-282-RHAP or robhasawebsite.com/voicemail. Okay, Jessica, let's just jump right into this Survivor finale. My goodness, crazy night, 3 hours, started with the final 6, ended with the final 3. Jeremy Collins is the winner of Survivor Second Chance. Are you surprised, Jessica, that Jeremy is our winner of this season?
You know, I can't say that I didn't see it coming, but that's not to say it wasn't a really exciting ride to get there. And you can certainly see that this is not a disappointing winner, and this is not, this is not a guy that is winning because other people, screwed up. He played a good game, and he did a masterful final tribal council, I thought.
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, like the performance all across the board tonight, Jeremy was really, he was almost flawless, Jess. Was there anything you would have done differently throughout the final 6 with Jeremy? Obviously, he would have got voted out if he didn't have that idol. But, what else could he have done? He played it flawlessly.
Yeah, he was really, even some of the stuff that I thought at first when we're talking about, is he going to flip at the final 4, and is he going to force a tie? I realized after the fact, well, of course he's not. He's never going to do that. But in talking to Kelly and securing that with her, he probably locked down her vote. And that was brilliant too. So it was fantastic.
And then again, he's twisting the second chance question that he gets from Kelly Wentworth and turning it into, hey, I'm playing this game for my family. I got a wife and 2 kids at home and another kid on the way. And I think once that happened, it was just like, all right, this is game over. Jeremy has won this game. I didn't think it was going to be unanimous, but I think he had it in the bag at that point. Were you surprised that Spencer Bledsoe and Miss Foxy Tasha Fox, did not get any votes at this tribal council?
Spencer, I was a little surprised. And there's a couple of kind of random, stupid reasons I'm surprised Spencer didn't get any votes. But Tasha, I'm not surprised, because she was like the Cassandra of this tribal council. Nobody asked her any questions. She got a couple of passing mentions, and it felt like it was always between Spencer and Jeremy, and maybe it wasn't even between Spencer and Jeremy at that point. The one thing that did surprise me was Kelly Wigglesworth, kind of clawing at her last piece of relevance by calling back to Greg Buis. And I thought, Spencer plays this the game theory way. He looks at what everybody else has picked, and he picks the number that's going to give him the best possible shot at guessing the right number. And I guess the number must have been 1 or 2, because...
But that just stunned me also.
Yeah.
I mean, she's like, okay, Jeremy, first off, the pick a number thing with Greg Buis, okay, fine if it's with 2 people, but with 3, I mean, it's a really unfair to the first person picking, because it just kind of sucks. And for Jeremy, he picks 2, which I was just like, wait, why are you picking 2? But then I guess really, I mean, he knows what he's doing, because
Yes.
it worked. And he won. So, I mean, I guess he probably, and this is completely random, but I guess he figured if I go 5, then I'm going to get picked, they're going to take opposite ends and I'm going to have to get dead on. Whereas if I choose at the opposite end of the spectrum, at least maybe I'll get 2 numbers at it. So anyway, brilliant move by Jeremy. It worked out very well for him, and he's the winner as a result of that. Spencer, getting no votes, Jess, do you think there was anything differently that Spencer could have done at that final tribal council once he's in that moment?
Well, he could have knocked someone up a few months earlier, maybe.
That'll do it.
Seriously, I don't think anybody there was voting against Spencer or against Tasha. These were all votes that were cast for Jeremy. And in that case, I think this is true of every time someone has won unanimously. People aren't really looking to punish someone that they feel shouldn't have been there. They were really just looking to reward somebody that played a great game.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did. They rewarded him for the great, masterful gameplay that he pulled off, and it just unbelievable, really. And I was just thinking about this tonight, Jess, watching the episode. How do you think Jeremy, a guy who is a physical threat, who showed in San Juan del Sur that he got eliminated pretty shortly after the merge, but he did show that he's got chops for this game. How in the world did these guys let Jeremy get to the end?
It's a crazy thing that you ask yourself every time you see someone play such a steamroller game. And I think it's something, I guess maybe the Cambodian heat got to them. Like, everybody was half dead by the end of the season. They just weren't thinking straight. Because I would have looked at Jeremy. I would have wanted him. I mean, I have the advantage of being able to see everything and having confessional access and knowing the way that it's playing out, but you have to think this was a flaw in everybody's game, that they didn't look at Jeremy and say, this is a guy that's going to go all the way.
Yeah, and what really boggles my mind too is I agree with you. I think it's interesting with there's a lot of times where players steamroll seasons. We've seen your Kim Spradlins. You might not want to say he steamrolled it, but we've seen a unanimous win with Earl Cole. I think with those guys though, they did it on a season with all new players. Mm-hmm. Never, and again, this comes back to the theme of this season. Whether we're calling it the evolution of Survivor, as Steven's referring to, and all these things, and the game is evolving. We've never seen it where somebody has been on an all-returning season, a big alpha male guy like Jeremy, steamroll everyone and go to the end and dominate this game. So kudos to Jeremy Collins. I mean, phenomenal job by him throughout the season, and I think we got to look at Jeremy as one of the best winners that has ever played this game. Correct, Jess?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's definitely. And the amazing thing, I think, is that he managed to win by playing a pretty dominant strategic game, but it wasn't boring. We've talked about some of these, Kim Spradlin, amazing player, not the most exciting season. Brian Heidick, amazing player, not the most exciting season. Jeremy played a much more, I think, nuanced game with a bunch of more experienced players. One thing I thought that he did that was very interesting, he noted it in his final tribal council speech, was that he purposely didn't win the rewards, and he tried to hide the fact that he was a threat. And I guess maybe when you have people like Spencer, who is a strategic nerd, and people like Joe, who will win every challenge they touch, maybe you can overlook him. It's amazing that a guy like Jeremy can play under the radar, but I think that was what he was doing in places.
Absolutely, and I think a big thing, there was this theme with Spencer and Tasha that, ooh, they have Spencer saying, yeah, I improved my social game and I'm working on my social game, and Tasha said, I'm here because of my social game and that's why I made it, because of my relationships. Jeremy didn't really discuss that too much, but really at the core of it, I think that is probably why he was able to avoid a lot of the heat. So very impressive win by Jeremy Collins, and it'll be interesting to hear where he ranks in terms of the pantheon of Survivor winners and the greats, because I think he did a fantastic job, and it really, I mean, very few flaws in his game this season, at least in my opinion. And we're being, obviously, there's a few things, like, the Steven Idol and that stuff. I mean, we can nitpick, but just looking at it as a whole, I think he just did such a fantastic job. We're gonna get into a few other things. We're not gonna go too long tonight. I'm gonna try my best not to ramble as much as I normally do. And then we'll get into your questions. But a couple things that we have to discuss is, we got to talk about that crazy tribal council. I mean, at the final six, Jessica, what was going through your mind when we saw, all the votes don't count, Keith is volunteering to go home? It is insane. Is that the craziest tribal council in the history of this game?
I think it might well be. Honestly, if Jeff Probst needs to get out his little pen and draw you a diagram of it, you got to know it's complicated. And I seemed to places that he didn't even fully grasp what was going on for a while there. You could tell they paused it in a couple of places, and the producers all got into a huddle and said, okay, well, if this is happening here and that's happening there, then, what does that mean, and who is actually eligible? And it was complicated, and it was really cool to watch it play out.
It was really, really fun and exciting, and it's always cool to see things that are unprecedented on the show. And it was just, the look of disbelief on everyone's face. I mean, and Jeremy's he's just laughing with Kelly and pats her on the back. It's like, oh, you had an idol, really? And it just, I thought it was a great moment and really cool. And the thing for me, Jess, that I found really cool was that we got to see Kimmy Kappenberg play this game. I mean, we didn't get to see too much of her this season, but Kimmy really brought it at that Final Six Tribal Council.
Yeah, she was definitely picking up some tips over the course of the season. And, we've seen flashes of Kimmy trying to play the game, and I think there was probably a lot more going on that we weren't shown because it didn't play into the greater arc of the season. But I would be willing to bet that Kimmy probably had something going on every leg of this game. But it was only a few times that anything she did actually constituted a big move that ended up having an effect on the game.
Certainly, yeah. I think she had probably a lot more Jenna Lewis in her game, or Jenna Lewis from Survivor All-Stars, than we probably got to see on the show. And I'm glad we got to see that at least tonight, because that was really cool. And maybe her acting job wasn't the greatest, but the fact that she was out there trying to make something happen and not just going with the flow and saying, oh yeah, I'm cool with fourth, or I'm cool with third. Now, she was playing to win. I think that was really cool, and I didn't go in expecting that at all. I mean, on my podcast this past week, I was talking to Angie Kantz, and we said Kimmy had 0% chance of winning the game. Well, if that would have worked, who knows? Could have been different. How do you think this season would have unfolded had Kimmy's plan worked? Let's say Jeremy does go home at that Final Six Tribal Council. Who do you think wins this game?
I think it'd probably come down to, we'd probably see a final that had at least Kimmy and Kelly in it. And I think at that point it's kind of a toss-up. I think Kelly had a very good case. I think she would have been great in front of a jury. But I also think Kimmy had a couple of big moves she could have pointed to. And I think there were two compelling cases in there. As for who the third person is, that's hard to say. Is it Keith? Is it Tasha? Is it Spencer? I'm pretty sure it's not Spencer. Pretty sure it was going to be one of Keith or Tasha. And, I don't know that Keith could have brought his, Clarence Darrow into the final tribal council and pulled the victory away. But if people were mad enough, maybe. Who knows?
Who knows? Would have been interesting. I think we got the better outcome of those two.
We did.
Just based on, at least that was how the story was presented to us throughout the season. So what we saw tonight made more sense than if we were to get, like a KKK final tribal, if we want to call it that.
Well, let's not.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not a good idea to call it that. Well, speaking of Keith, let's talk about one other thing that I really wanted to bring up as well. And Keith, now, I mean, just the past, last week with him forgetting Tasha's name, and then tonight he was just saying, he's like, oh well, that might be the nail in my coffin. Like he was Keith being Keith tonight. It was great. And we actually, I don't know about you, Jess, but during the reunion, did it not look like Keith was just ready to burst into tears?
Yeah, he seemed very emotional. He did seem like maybe he didn't appreciate being played for the buffoon, because that was Keith's role this entire time. Like, especially after we lost Steven and his branches and his crying. The person that got the dodo music most of the time, the person that got like the comedic moments at his expense, that was Keith. But it was also, like, Keith always has that sort of hangdog look. He always looks like his eyes are kind of moist. So I don't know. But I think my favorite moment, maybe in the entire finale, possibly would have, like, this is going to make Mario Lanza's next Funny 115, is Jeremy sitting there trying to get Keith's attention for a solid 15 minutes.
That was unbelievable, that moment. I mean, he's just snapping at him and like waving, and Keith's just not even looking and not even, oh my goodness, amazing television. And Keith is just great. The thought process, and I was trying to go through this in my head as I was watching the episode, and we saw Keith's answer in the live show, and that was, Jeff asked him, he said, Keith, why didn't you play that hidden immunity idol? Why did you not just, the fake hidden immunity idol that Kelly Wentworth made, why didn't you go for that? And he said that, he's like, well, I just thought that wouldn't have been a good way to go out, and I just couldn't do that. But that couldn't have been the real reason, right? Just like, why would he not go for that?
He may have forgotten. I'm just saying. But, this is also the same guy that was this close to stepping down at the end of the previous tribal council.
Which, that also made no sense, too. I mean, what? I mean, he almost steps down, and then there's this, they show him reaching for something in his pocket, like as if he's grabbing the idol, but then he doesn't do it, Jess. So, I guess, are we just Keith Nail's just on another level then?
Yeah, I think he says there's no real logic to it, but I think there's Keith logic. I think he has his own values that he feels like they're important to him in Survivor, and he manages to get pretty far on the strength of being a guy that's easy to get along with. And at a certain point, he runs up against the strategy, and he's not ready to go that direction.
Yeah, poor Keith. I mean, great dude. We love him. Not the best Survivor player, but some great moments from Keith. I mean, just the comic relief from him, fantastic. And I think something that what I came to, the conclusion I've come to, is back to what you said, is the buffoon thing. He's getting that edit. I think Keith might have thought that, oh, well, if I play this idol, or if I pretend I have a fake idol, my buddies at the fire hall are going to make fun of me. This is going to be the new stick to the plan if this doesn't work. But so I think that maybe was in the back of his mind. Who knows what it was, but it would have been very interesting had he done that, because I personally think that they would have voted out Spencer in that spot, don't you?
Yeah, I think they would have. If he had been able to convince people that was an idol. It was a pretty well-made idol. Someone pointed out on Twitter that that looked an awful lot like the birthday present that Cass made for Kelly. Did she repurpose that into the idol?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good point, and I believe that was from Ben on Twitter. Sorry, I didn't see your whole name, Ben. But Ben, great point. I think that certainly is where she got a lot of those materials. And because there was like that, I don't know what it was. Those beads. There was like bluey green, the bluish green color. I'm pretty sure Cass I remember Cass giving her that. So Yeah, that's a really good point, and interesting how that foreshadowing came into play. The birthday present almost, I mean, it almost helped Kelly Wentworth win the game. That would have been something else. Speaking of Kelly Wentworth, uh, oh my goodness, I mean, amazing job by Kelly this season. So great. Everyone, so many people, so much love for Kelly Wentworth out there for a lot of people. Fantastic job, I think. I don't think, personally, I don't think that there's much else she could have done, and we couldn't have imagined this in our wildest dreams. I saw Josh Wigler tweeting earlier that the DC prophecy, the Drew Christie prophecy, has finally come to fruition. Jess, what do you think about Kelly Wentworth and her playing this game again? She's got to get another shot, right?
Yeah, I think she's a lock for Survivor. Third time's the charm. Yeah, honestly, it was clear, like, she really has seen every episode. She really knew what she was doing, but she got dealt a bad hand where I think Jeremy and Tasha, and to a lesser extent Spencer, got dealt a much better one. And she has been on the bottom pretty much from day one. Like, she orchestrated a few early moves on Takeo, and then she was at the bottom of every single dynamic she was in from then on, and she managed to get herself all the way to the Final Four just on, pure scrappiness. And I think if the tables had turned a different way at 1 or 2 points in the game, we'd be talking right now about Kelly Wentworth, the winner. But that's fan fiction.
It is, but amazing job. I can't say it enough. I love Kelly Wentworth. I'm sorry, I can't hide it. She just did such a great job. I mean, all these people, really. I mean, so many people did such a great job this season, and I'm so glad that we got to watch her get that second chance, because before this, I never would have guessed that we would be seeing. I mean, a year ago, who would have thought that? Yeah, Kelly Wentworth is going to come back on Survivor a year from now, and she's almost going to win. I don't think anybody could have ever guessed that. But let's jump into your questions, guys. We've got a ton of comments and a ton of feedback from you. We want to hear from you, so definitely, if you haven't already, tweet us, use the hashtag RHAP, or leave a comment in the YouTube video below, and hopefully we'll get to yours before the night is out. So this question comes to us from Carrie Graveline, and Carrie Graveline says, is it a blessing in disguise for Fishback that he wasn't sitting next to Jeremy JT 2.0 with another clean sweep? Now, this is something that was discussed earlier in the season, when the week that Steven went home, Jessica. So what do you think about that?
Well, I gotta think that one of the things that Steven was really focused on going into his second chance was, if I get to the end, how am I going to handle this differently? Because that was his fatal flaw in Tocantins, and that's the specific thing that's been haunting him. And I would imagine he would have a few tricks to pull out at the finals, but I think it would be pretty damning for him to go up in the finals with somebody that outright saved his ass out of nowhere and he had no idea it was coming. I think that would be pretty hard to get over. So, yeah, I think it would have sucked pretty hard for him to get dragged along with Jeremy, who was, I think, arguably unbeatable by anybody at that point.
Yeah, I think maybe Joe could challenge him, but other than that, I mean, Jeremy was the clear. He was the front runner, definitely at that point. Do you think now that Spencer has kind of inherited this Fishback spot, because he kind of was similar to Steven this season? Not that he was with Jeremy 100% from the beginning, but he became his ride or die throughout the season, goes to the end with Jeremy, and Jeremy gets a clean sweep against Spencer. So, Jess, do you think that now this is going to haunt Spencer in a similar fashion, and do you think he's going to have that burning desire to play this game again? Because he kind of seemed indifferent at the finale.
Yeah, I think he seemed like he made his peace with it. But, a lot of people show up at the finale and they seem relatively blasé about their circumstances. He's had a lot of months to think about it and get over it. Like, if we were seeing him the day after everybody filmed, it would be a different story, and I think everybody that's ever been on the show, pretty much, with like very, very few exceptions. Like, if you get to host The View later, maybe you don't, but everybody else sits there, like, every day of their life they think about what could I have done differently and how would I do it differently if I was going back, and that's definitely something he's doing. And especially, like, I don't think anybody did it harder than him going into this. So
Yeah, no, that's a
yeah.
really that excellent point going into it. I'm sure he was one of those people doing it. Firefist Ace says, "Do you think that Jeremy's best subtle move was redirecting the target onto Spencer in case the Keith vote went awry?"
Well, I think regardless of what the likelihood was that the Keith vote was going to go awry, I'm pretty sure that Jeremy knew it was not, like, it was a very, very outside chance. This was definitely the way to play it. Like, this was the way to get everybody thinking that Jeremy was at least open to working with them at that point, so he wasn't just rejecting them outright, because that costs you jury votes if you do that. So I think that was absolutely the right call there.
Yeah. This one is from Derek XU90. He says, "If Spencer flips at 5, can he win against Tasha and Keith, or does Keith win?" So what do we think about this? So at 5, so we're looking at so hypothetically in that spot, he would have to. I don't know who he would be flipping against there, Jess. Would he be going with Wentworth? And I don't know if that one makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the flipping is. I guess we're saying that he goes with Wentworth and Keith, and they get rid of Jeremy, and then, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if that one would work.
But in that final 3, I think he's still got a shot at winning, unless he really pissed somebody off.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if Spencer, if he could have got rid of Jeremy, I think he would have had a really good shot of winning the game.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he's against Wentworth, then maybe it's a little different. But it certainly would have been close. Just Jeremy, no one can take Jeremy. That's terrible. Okay, it's terrible for everyone else. I feel bad for them. It's great for Jeremy, and I loved it because
fantastic.
Great story and amazing for him and Val and the family. This one comes from Edward Morris, my buddy Edmo. He says, "Who were you disappointed to not hear from at the reunion, Jess?"
Oh, well, I was impressed with the even-handedness of, or the relative even-handedness of Jeff Probst's, alumni canvassing, because there have been seasons where he's talked to 3 people and nobody else. So we heard from almost everybody on the jury. He gave everybody a fair shot, and he didn't talk to any random children in the audience, so good job, Jeff Probst. I would have liked to have heard from some of the earlier people. Like, the only person from the back row he talked to really was Varner. And Varner and Terry, of course, but Terry doesn't even count because, Terry had a special circumstance. But, we could have talked to PG a little bit. We could have talked to Shireen a little bit. It was... there are people that we don't need to hear much from. Like, they didn't really contribute a lot to the story. And I understand why we don't talk to every single person anymore, because in those early seasons that got tedious too. But seriously. Shireen,
you still making millions of dollars? Yeah, okay, PG, you're doing broadcasts on Twitch. Sometimes you're doing good though. Good. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. Yeah, it's kind of like we don't really need that. I would have, though. I mean, I would have liked Jeff Varner to get a little more time because he was so crucial to the early episodes of the show, and I think it would have been great if we could have somehow got some more Jeff Varner in there. I was disappointed that we didn't really hear from Cass. Did we not hear from Cass?
We heard from her a little bit, but it was more in, like, it was kind of in the blurty capacity if we're going back to the finale draft. She didn't really directly get asked anything, but she weighed in when it was appropriate, and, she gave Andrew Savage a snuggle, so we got to feel bad for her there.
Oh my God! Can we just for a sec talk about Andrew Savage? Andrew Savage, okay, calling out Spencer and Jeremy for them being arrogant. Oh my goodness! Like, what? That was just the most absurd thing I have ever seen. At least in recent memory. Like, my goodness, Andrew Savage, delusional. Holy crap! I mean, post-show and some of the interviews and stuff, he seemed to be better, but out on the island, there was just a stick up his butt or something. I'm not quite sure, but it just. I was not a fan of that at all. It was actually hilarious how crazy that was.
Yeah, and on the heels of him of him explaining to everybody what the jury was and like what they were going to do and why it was important. It's like, I know you and Jeff Probst are BFFs, but that's his job. He already did it. We're good. Take your hat off and go sit down.
Exactly. It's like, and the hat too. My goodness, that Savage's beanie. Speaking of, before we move on from the pre-jury people, there was a little bit of discussion on the internet this week and on social media. Vetus was not in attendance tonight. If you noticed, Shireen was in the first boot seat. Vetus was nowhere to be seen. What's your take on Vetus not being there, Jess? And enlighten the audience who has not been aware, or I'm sure most people know what's going on, but for those who don't, let them know what happened.
Yeah, well, basically the moral of the story is if you are the first person kicked off of Survivor, don't ask to be sent home instead of going on the pre-jury trip. Don't log on to your Instagram account while you are supposed to be sequestered. And don't go back to teaching yoga before filming has wrapped. Because he basically inadvertently spoiled a big chunk of the season, and I think your cat agrees.
Yes, my cat is not cooperating. He agrees with you 100%, Jess.
Yeah, and basically Vetus didn't cooperate with production, so production said you don't get to come to the finale. And part of that, I think, it was because they do get paid a certain amount of money to show up at the finale. And I think they said to Vetus, when he said he wanted nothing more to do with them, they said, okay, you don't get to come to the finale. You're forfeiting all your rights to any of that stuff. And he was fine with it at the point. He had a small kid. I guess I kind of understand that. But also, he just kind of violated a little bit of something that's a little bit sacred about Survivor and about spoiling the season. So I understand why they didn't want him there. I feel bad for Shireen, who had to sit in the first boot chair.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for, and Vetus was on Twitter and saying some stuff, and I like Vetus. I felt bad for him, but at the same time, I totally get where they were coming from in that spot. Natalie Chicago says, do you think Spencer lost votes because of his Kelly vote-off outburst, and if so, whose? Yeah, we saw that, people were talking about, okay, well, it was Savage, and he was talking about Spencer's outburst, saying like, oh, well, I'm going to, basically implying that Spencer is going to taint the jury if he was going to say that. That's pretty much what Spencer was implying there. So I guess we can assume that he might have lost Savage's vote there, but I feel like Savage probably would have been voting for Jeremy anyway. Do you think that swayed anyone?
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't think it was the classiest possible move at the time, but, it did end up accomplishing the goal of not getting Spencer voted out. Like, he said, I'm going to do this if you put me on the jury, and Jeremy didn't put him on the jury. It was kind of the spot he was in. I don't think that cost him any votes that he was going to have. I'm pretty sure at that point he probably didn't, he wasn't losing votes at that point. There were no votes to lose.
For sure, and I think part of it too was, Spencer is just, he's playing defense, he's backpedaling, he's in his head thinking, oh my gosh, my game is, I'm going to get voted out right here, and he's doing everything he can to backtrack and save himself. It came across really poorly to everyone else, I think, but I think in that spot, he did what he had to do to stay, and it worked. So, didn't win, but, third place money is better than fourth, so I guess we can give him that. We've got another one here from Edward Morris again. He says, would Kelly have been better off keeping Kimmy over Keith? So that would have been, so that was at the final six. There was the tie, then there was the revote, and it was like, all right, well, Jeff's like, okay, guys, well, you got to decide. Either Keith goes home, or if you want to vote out Kimmy, you can send her home. So Kelly decided she wanted to side with Keith, and she convinced him to stay. Was that the right call?
Yeah, I think so, because, for all of Kimmy's talk about, I need to make a big move, and I need to flip on my alliance, I want to work with you, she still has these previous ties to all these other people, and she's also, like, Keith is somebody you can mold. Kimmy wants to make the big moves. Keith does not want to make the big moves. Like, if you're going to be playing the game, if you can only play the game with one of them, play the game with the one that will do what you tell them to, and they'll think that's a good deal. Like, Kimmy's not going to do that. So, yeah, absolutely, that was the best call.
To play devil's advocate, though, I think if Kelly is thinking, okay, I just need to win out to make it to the final tribal council, wouldn't you rather go there with Kimmy instead of Keith because Kimmy's weak in the challenges? And as Keith said tonight, what was the it was what was it? It was a ball something. I have it in my notes, but it was hilarious what he said. And I feel like ball savviness. That's what.
Yeah,
that's what
ball
he said.
savviness. That was
Keith's
gold.
got that. Yeah, that was amazing. Keith's got that ball savviness. So what? Because that must have come across her mind. No.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's a challenge threat, it's Keith. And if you bring Kimmy to the end, you're bringing her through a path that involves her alienating everyone she's worked with in the game up to that point. That is a fair point. But I think...
Yeah, and also, too, going back to Jeremy and Steven, Kelly could say in a final tribal council, look, I saved Kimmy. I had her fate in my hands, and I kept her in this game. So I think that is another thing to help her. Regardless, it didn't matter because Kelly Wentworth got voted out. Yeah. But, I mean, interesting to look at it both sides. You can make arguments for both of them. Here's another one. This one is from Bobby Jefferson, and he says, are we giving Spencer a bad rap? He didn't win immunity at Final 4 and 5, so he needed a solid alliance to survive. Yeah, I mean, I think Spencer did a great job this season. I just think the problem is he was sitting next to Jeremy, and he aligned himself with somebody who virtually nobody can beat. And I imagine you agree with that, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer played the hand he was dealt. I thought he played very well. And I think he definitely corrected a lot of the mistakes he made the first time out. I absolutely think it was a huge improvement on his part. It just wasn't quite enough given the circumstances that he was in.
Yeah, definitely there. I hope we see Spencer again as well, because I think that, I mean, although now, I mean, he finishes in 4th and then he finishes in a tie for 2nd, so I think it's going to be kind of tough for him to do well in a season. Here's another one. This one is from @wordj. M. Hubbles. Wow, this is quite the name here. Thinking back at that final 6, couldn't Kelly vote for Tasha if she was playing the idol? Okay, so this is an interesting one. So before the votes happen, we're saying that Kelly, if she knows she's going to play the idol, instead of voting for Jeremy, like Keith and Kimmy are doing, throw one on Tasha. I think theoretically that could make sense, but I think the thing there is that Kelly did not anticipate that Jeremy had an idol, right?
Yeah, nobody did. I mean, we saw that great scene where Spencer and Jeremy are sitting there, and Spencer's like, well, she already had an idol, so she can't have another one. I mean, you already had an idol. No way you have another one. It was fantastic. Like, you couldn't script that.
That was so good. And, yeah, I mean, it was funny. I'm surprised that Spencer, I mean, because, yeah, he just thought it was absurd that Jeremy would even bring that up. So I wonder if Jeremy saying, oh, well, what if she has another one? And then Spencer's like, no way she wouldn't. And Jeremy's like, no, oh, well, she could. I wonder if that maybe made Spencer think, oh, is it possible that Jeremy has an idol? Because if I was out there, that might have got the wheels turning a little bit. Alas, he was surprised, so I guess not really. But interesting clip for sure amongst many in this finale. This one's from @Bachelorettes on Twitter, and Bachelorette says, did Spencer pull an Amanda Kimmel final tribal, and or do you think Jeremy had a Dan Giesling finale and owned his moves?
Wow. I don't know if it was quite as bad as Amanda Kimmel.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that was that bad. The constant, though, is that both Amanda and Spencer played very solid games, but both times they went up in the final tribal against somebody who was better than they were, and that's really what it came down to. I think Amanda Kimmel gets a lot of heat for playing not the greatest game and all this stuff, but Amanda was a good player. She just happened to be sitting next to Todd Herzog and Parvati. So that's that. The Dan Giesling comparison. Now you're familiar with Big Brother, right, Jessica?
Yeah, I am passingly familiar with Big Brother.
Okay,
like you can't work for our HAP for as long as I have and not have a little familiarity with Big Brother.
Okay, so the Dan Giesling comparisons, that was interesting. I don't know. I mean, it really almost was on the level of a Dan Giesling type of finale in jury questioning period and that's Big Brother 10 Dan Giesling, not Big Brother 14 Dan Giesling.
Of course.
But I do think, though, Dan, I just think he individually, how he tailored his answers and everything was just masterful in Big Brother 10. Whereas with Jeremy, I don't know if he was so masterful in terms of how he was answering to people's questions individually. I think it was more so just some of the things he was saying, it was very inspirational, and then also just that the family thing. I think once that happened, it was like, all right, checkmate, this thing is over.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jeremy had it won going into the tribal council. He would have had to screw up pretty epically. So he didn't necessarily need to persuade people. He didn't have to win them over individually. They were all kind of, he'd set them up to be on his side to go in there, but then he had that trump card that he threw down at the very end, and that sealed the deal.
Yeah. All right. This one is from, my buddy Adam Rita. Adam Rita says, does Jeremy still win unanimously with Wentworth in the final 3 instead of Spencer? Great question, Adam. What do you think about that one, Jess?
I think Wentworth gets votes. I think Jeremy still wins.
I'm with you on that one. I think that Wentworth probably, although it would have been interesting. I think Sierra she could have pulled. Yeah. I think Abby she could have pulled. I think Cass she could have pulled. So there's 3 right there. And then who knows how else things swing and her arguments at the final tribal. I'm with you in that it's probably Jeremy though in that spot. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna try and wrap this thing. It's 11:55 on the East Coast, so we're gonna try and wrap this thing up in a couple minutes here. So we're gonna get a few more in here. We're gonna wind things down. This one is from Nicolette Wads, and she says, "Great Jeremy win, but for those trying to beat him, Spencer, Kelly, Kimmy, when was the right time to make a move against the family man?"
I think you got to take him out. Within sight of the finals, but not within close sight of it. Like, get him at 6 or 7. And 7's a great place to make a move against a power player, and I think that would have been a capital time to do it.
Yeah, 7, always a good spot. I mean, I'm just trying to rewind in my mind who was around at 7, but I'm sure a guy like Jeremy, who knows? We weren't out there, but I feel like Jeremy is a guy that you could get anyone on board at you should at least be able to get anyone on board at any time to take him out. So 7 would have been great. I'm with you there. I mean, honestly, any time. Just when you got a chance. But once you get to 5 and 4, I mean, letting a guy like that get there, it's certainly dangerous. Okay, here's our last question from Rob as a Planet. This one's from Johnny D. Silvera. Johnny says, does Jeremy Collins rank in the upper, middle, or lower third of all-time Survivor winners? Jess, what do you think about that question?
I think he's got to be in the argument for upper third. I think this was a great game, and it was not just a great game, it was an interesting game. And I think that almost puts him above other players of a high caliber because he kept it watchable. He really did, and he played a clean game too, right? Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't like Tony out there. He wasn't going all over the place. He was calm. He had good relationships. He never had to. He was in the know pretty much every single vote. He knew it was even when Steven was going home. I guess maybe not so much, but for the most part, he knew what was going on. Played a clean game. Excellent work by Jeremy Collins. This season as a whole. Jess, what do you feel about that? I'll ask you the same question in terms of the third. So, I guess in the thirds, I think that's kind of clear. It's in the top 10, right?
It's in the top 10. I wouldn't say it's in the top 5. I mean, it had probably the best cast. It was the most anticipated. It had the fewest total dud episodes, but it was also like. The thing we sacrifice for that is the narrative arc, and I felt like there were times when the story that we were being told was all over the place because they were trying so hard to make every single vote out something that we didn't see coming and something that people were. I think those little voting blocks happen almost every season. I think this is just the first time we've had a name to them, and I think it's the first time they've been played up. So that's what I think. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's certainly a fair assessment. I think and also too the idea of what Jeff Varner said tonight, right, was that everybody was a great player.
Yeah.
Everybody knew the playbook on all of these players. Nobody trusted anyone, so that kind of amplified it a little bit. In terms of where I would put it, I'd have to just look at them as a whole. But off the top of my head, I think it does hit the top 5 for me. I don't know if it's the top 3, but it's certainly in the discussion. discussion. I thought it was a great season. I was entertained through and through. And tip my cap to Survivor once again. They've done it, and I think they did a great job. I lied about that being the last question because there's one more thing that I want to talk about quickly here.
Okay.
We saw the preview to next season, Jess.
I know we're going here.
It's Survivor Brains versus Beauty versus Brawn 2. And here's our final question. This one's from Farzin21. And Farzin21 says, what is the obsession to quickly repeat a themed season? So here we go. So we had Blood versus Water back-to-back, very close. We've had Brains versus Beauty versus Brawn now. I mean, we had it in 28. Now we're doing it again in 32. So what do you think about that? And what do you think of what are your just initial thoughts on this upcoming season we're going to see?
Well, honestly, I think Brain versus Brawn versus Beauty. I mean, Cagayan was a great cast, and from what I know about that, they had a cast, and then they decided to shoehorn the existing cast into these 3 buckets. And I don't know that theme necessarily added anything that wasn't already there, because it was just a really good bunch of people and some interesting dynamics that contributed to an unpredictable season. And I don't think that you can really necessarily say that Brains versus Brawn versus Beauty had a whole lot to do with that. So I think it's going to depend on not these buckets and not this theme, but who are these people we've got? Like, would they be good in any season? So I hope we have a good cast.
Yeah, I think, and if you look at Blood vs. Water 1 and Blood vs. Water 2, although San Juan del Sur, those guys look really good this season, I think the consensus is that Blood vs. Water 1 was so great and that you can't really, and Blood vs. Water 2 was a season where they came up with a theme and they were casting to that theme. It'll be interesting to see, did they do that this time with this season? But I don't think you can go wrong with the 3-tribe format. It has it works. It's a proven formula. I think this is the direction Survivor should be going from here on out, is these 3 tribes, unless it's one of these all-star seasons, of course. So I've got high hopes for it. I think it's going to be a really solid season, but we'll find out in February once it premieres. There was one of the people though that they showed, Jess. It said he was an Army veteran, and his name was, I think it said Caleb. He looked a little bit familiar. What do you think about him?
He? Well, I recognized him from the summer that I decided, well, everybody at RHAP talks about it so fondly, I'm going to get on board with Big Brother. And there was a guy on that season that I had to stop watching the show because of him, and now he's on a show that I'm locked into watching. So this should be interesting. Nothing. I'm sure he's I'm not sure actually, but he may be a perfectly nice human being in real life. But from what we've seen of him, I'm not looking forward to it, honestly.
Beast Mode Cowboy, I'm out here on the Survivor Island, and I'm looking, and I see, there's Amber, and oh man, I would order millions of prescriptions to Amber's magazine. That's all I have to say. I hope we get some more of those moments from Caleb on Survivor this season, because I mean, some of his DRs in Big Brother were quite comical, and yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm like Keith Nail. He can bring some comic relief, so I'm going to remain hopeful.
His strategic chops were not maybe up to, a Dan Giesling. And I feel bad for any beautiful woman that's out there with him, but you're right. He was very funny at times, and I hope we see the funny side and maybe not so much the stalker side.
Yeah, we don't want to see that. I think I'm pretty sure he's engaged now, so I think.
Oh, well, good. Congratulations.
Yeah, so good.
Very happy for him.
Yeah, congratulations to Caleb, Beast Mode Cowboy. I believe he's engaged, so I think hopefully we won't see that on this season.
Got that out of his system. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for all the women of the world.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Any final thoughts, Jess, before we get out of here today?
Mainly, I just want to say that it has been so much fun to be a part of the RHAP community during this season, and I feel like this season has lasted twice as long as any other season because we had the campaign, we were invested in these players in a way we've never been invested in a Survivor season before, and it's really such a great time to be a Survivor fan, and especially to be an RHAP fan. So I'm really privileged to be a part of this community, and especially to be talking to you here tonight on finale night.
Yeah, me too, Jess. It's been a blast. Thank you for joining me. And it really is the golden age of Survivor. I mean, we've got just an amazing season. I mean, just so many people involved in social media and in the Rob as a Planet and, you know, the RHAP community. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm so thankful and happy that I've been able to be a part of it as well. So thank you to you guys for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate you guys hopping along and joining us. We need a hashtag for this episode, Jess. So I don't know what we want to roll with. We could go hashtag Jordan's cat. I think we could do that because my cat was meowing earlier. So maybe, do you want to go with that and then hashtag know it sums because that's what we're calling ourselves?
I think we can go that way.
Okay. So
take your pick.
Yeah. So take your pick. Tweet what you want. If you like my cat, use hashtag Jordan's cat. If you liked Jessica and I doing this recap, use hashtag Know It Sums. You tweet Jessica. She's at Haymaker Hattie. You can tweet myself. I am at Jordan Parhar. Remember, leave your voicemails for Rob and Josh. Go to robaswebsite.com/voicemail. Make sure that you leave some for them because there's plenty to talk about, and they're gonna go on and. We're going to get so much Survivor coverage in the next little bit. So sit tight. You're going to hear from Rob and Josh very shortly. Hopefully they will have their recap posted online very soon. And don't forget, if you haven't already, if you like this tonight, don't forget, you can always see Jessica during the Amazing Race season every Friday live after the Amazing Race episodes. That's starting up back in January, right?
February, actually. Lincoln's birthday.
Okay, so Lincoln's birthday. So there you go. So tune in for that. If you don't watch them, if you didn't know that, definitely check it out because Jess does a great job every week with Rob. So go see Jessica there and come check out my podcast every week as well. Every Saturday, usually we're live at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. The reality TV, we're happy hour. We were talking about Survivor throughout the season. The off season's coming up, so probably some off season topics of discussion will be coming up pretty shortly here. Big Brother, Survivor, whole whack of stuff. So join us, check that out. It's a really fun time, and I really enjoy it. And thank you to all of you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. Enjoy your evening. Happy Survivor finale. For Jessica Leese, I'm Jordan Parhar. Hashtag Jordan's cat. Hashtag Know It Sums. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Peace out.